their blood didn't boil under the black suns of Nera, ours will make a fine substitute." The words echoed through the void, transmitted across light years in all directions. A grim promise from the captain of the human warship Vanguard. The crew, hardened men of steel and nerve, knew the weight of those words, though none flinched as they rang through the bulkheads. They had waited long for this moment, their chance to face the Drathions, the scourge of the galaxy, and repay them for the atrocities they had committed. The Drathions were a race of conquerors, their reach spanning dozens of star systems, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. They were creatures born of shadow and fire, their massive war fleets unstoppable, their technology beyond comprehension to most. Empires crumbled before them, entire species driven to extinction or slavery. They had once been myth, a terror whispered about in the darkness of space, until they descended upon the galaxy with a fury unmatched in recorded history. But humanity was different. Humans had heard the stories, had watched as the Drathions consumed their neighbors, growing ever closer to Earth's sector. They were not blind to the impending doom, but where others had begged for mercy or sought to hide, humanity had prepared. The Earth's resources were pooled, minds from every corner of the planet working in unison. They knew there would be no negotiations, no surrender, and no salvation from the stars. Only one truth remained: survival would be on humanity's terms alone. The Vanguard had been forged in the crucible of desperation, a ship unlike any other in human history. It was a behemoth, built not just for war, but for the utter annihilation of anything that dared to threaten humanity. Armed with weapons that bent the fabric of space, shields that could withstand the heart of a star, and engines powered by the fury of 1,000 suns, it was humanity's answer to the Drathion menace. And now it was humanity's spear, pointed directly at the heart of the Drathion Empire. "Captain, we're approaching the outer defense grid," reported Lieutenant Harris, his voice steady, betraying none of the tension that gripped the crew. Captain Marcus Locke nodded, his eyes fixed on the view screen that displayed the cold expanse of space ahead. The Drathion defense grid was legendary, a web of automated battle stations, mines, and patrol ships that had shredded countless invaders long before they even saw the Drathion homeworld. But the Vanguard was no ordinary ship, and Locke was no ordinary captain. "Initiate cloak," Locke ordered, his voice as cold as the void around them. The Vanguard shimmered and vanished from sight, the advanced stealth technology enveloping the ship in an imperceptible bubble. To the Drathion sensors, there was nothing there, just empty space. But the humans knew better. They knew that the Drathions relied on their superior technology, their arrogance blinding them to the possibility of a threat that could bypass their defenses. "We're in position," Harris reported. "Deploy the spikes," Locke commanded. The Vanguard's hull opened in several places, and from within, sleek black projectiles were launched, each one embedding itself in the floating battle stations and patrol ships. These were not weapons in the traditional sense, but rather infiltration devices. Once attached, they began to burrow through the Drathion technology, hacking into systems, overriding controls, and turning the once deadly defense grid into a puppet of the Vanguard's will. "Spikes are active, Captain," said Harris. "We're in control of the grid." "Good," Locke said, a rare smile crossing his face. "Open fire." The Vanguard's weapons came to life, but not in the way the Drathions would have expected. Instead of unleashing a barrage of missiles or energy blasts, the ship used the defense grid against itself. The battle stations turned on each other, firing at their allies. Patrol ships exploded in sudden, unprovoked attacks, and mines detonated in carefully calculated patterns, destroying the Drathion defenses without a single shot fired from the Vanguard itself. The crew watched as the once impenetrable barrier crumbled before them, and yet none of them relaxed. They knew this was only the beginning. The Drathions would not sit idly by as their defenses were dismantled. They would strike back, and when they did, they would do so with the full force of their war machine. "Captain, incoming transmission from the Drathion command," said Harris. "Patch it through," Locke replied. The view screen flickered, and the visage of a Drathion warlord filled the screen. The creature was imposing, even by human standards, its body encased in dark, segmented armor that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Its eyes burned with a cold fire, and its voice was a low growl that sent shivers down the spines of lesser men. "Humans," the warlord spat, as if the word itself was poison. "You dare to defy the Drathion Empire? You are nothing. Your pitiful world will burn, and your people will be enslaved, their bones ground to dust beneath our feet." Locke's smile returned, colder than the void. "You've had your turn, Drathion. Now it's ours." Before the warlord could respond, Locke gave the order. "Fire!" The vanguard unleashed its full arsenal, a symphony of destruction that reverberated through the blackness of space. Beams of energy tore through Drathion's ships. Missiles found their marks with pinpoint precision, and the very fabric of space rippled as the vanguard's most powerful weapons came to life. The Drathion war fleet, which had once seemed invincible, was being torn apart, ship by ship, by a single human warship. The warlord's image flickered, then disappeared as his ship was obliterated by a blast from the vanguard's main cannon. The crew watched in silence, knowing that this was only the first step in a much larger battle. They were deep in Drathion territory now, and there would be no turning back. "Captain," said Harris, his voice breaking the silence, "enemy reinforcements are inbound. Their main fleet is on the way." "Good," Locke said, his eyes burning with the same cold fire that had filled the Drathion warlords. "Let them come. We'll show them what it means to face humanity." The vanguard turned its prow toward the heart of the Drathion Empire, its engines flaring as it accelerated into the abyss. The crew braced themselves for what was to come, knowing that this was the moment they had trained for, the moment they had waited for their entire lives. As the stars streaked past them, Captain Locke gave the order that would seal the fate of the Drathians. "Full speed ahead!" The vanguard tore through the blackness of space, leaving behind a trail of destruction. The remnants of the Drathion defense grid floated aimlessly, lifeless in a drift, as the ship powered toward its next target, the Drathion homeworld. "Captain, we're detecting the Drathion main fleet on an intercept course," Lieutenant Harris reported, his fingers dancing over the console. "They'll be within range in 10 minutes. Captain Marcus Locke glanced at the tactical display, his expression unreadable. The Drathion fleet was massive, a true armada of death. Battleships the size of small moons, carriers bristling with fighter craft, cruisers armed with weapons that could decimate planets. It was a force designed to crush any opposition, a force that had done so countless times across the galaxy. But this time, they faced something different. "Deploy the drones," Locke ordered, his voice calm. The Vanguard's hull opened once more, this time releasing a swarm of autonomous drones. These weren't the typical combat drones used in past conflicts. They were experimental, built specifically for this mission. Each one was equipped with advanced AI, capable of learning and adapting in real time, and loaded with the most advanced weaponry humanity had ever developed. The drones shot forward, disappearing from view as they engaged their cloaking devices. They moved with purpose, spreading out in a wide formation to intercept the incoming Drathion fleet. "We're in for a hell of a fight, Captain," said Commander Steele, the ship's second-in-command. He was a grizzled veteran, his face marked by the scars of countless battles. If anyone understood the stakes, it was Steele. Locke nodded, his gaze never leaving the tactical display. "Let them come. This is what we're here for." The minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. The crew remained silent, the tension palpable as they watched the blips on the screen draw closer. The Vanguard continued its relentless advance, showing no signs of hesitation. Finally, the Drathion fleet came into view. It was a sight to behold, an ocean of ships, each one more menacing than the last. They moved in perfect unison, a testament to the cold efficiency of the Drathion war machine. "All hands, prepare for battle," Locke commanded, his voice echoing through the ship's corridors. The crew responded instantly, every man taking his position, ready to do whatever was necessary to secure victory. The first shots were fired by the Drathions, a barrage of energy beams and missiles that lit up the darkness. The Vanguard's shields flared as they absorbed the initial impact, but Locke knew this was just the beginning. "Drones are engaging the enemy," Harris reported. The view screen split into multiple feeds, each one displaying the perspective of a different drone. The AI-driven machines weaved through the Drathion fleet, dodging enemy fire with precision and striking back with deadly accuracy. Explosions rippled through the Drathion ranks as the drones targeted weak points, exploiting every vulnerability. But the Drathions were no strangers to war. They quickly adapted, coordinating their fire to swat the drones out of the sky. For every drone that managed to take down a Drathion ship, 2 more were destroyed in the process. "Drone losses are mounting, Captain," Harris warned. "That's fine," Locke replied, his tone measured. "They've served their purpose." He pressed a button on his console, and the tactical display shifted to show the true nature of the drone assault. As the drones fell, they released a cloud of nanobots, microscopic machines that could infiltrate and disable enemy systems. The nanobots swarmed over the Drathion ships, invisible to the naked eye, but deadly in their efficiency. Power grids failed, weapon systems malfunctioned, and communication lines went silent. The Drathion fleet, once a synchronized instrument of destruction, was descending into chaos. "Now it's our turn," Locke said, his eyes narrowing. The Vanguard surged forward, its engines pushing it to near-relativistic speeds. The ship's weapons roared to life, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts and railgun rounds that tore through the crippled Drathion ships. The main cannon fired, a beam of pure destruction that sliced through the Drathion flagship, cutting it in half in a single shot. The Drathions tried to regroup, to mount a counterattack, but it was too late. The nanobots had done their job too well, and the Vanguard was now in the midst of their formation, an unstoppable force tearing through their ranks. The human warship moved with a deadly grace, its every shot finding its mark, its every move outmaneuvering the floundering Drathion ships. "Enemy fleet is collapsing, Captain," Harris reported, a note of disbelief in his voice. "Finish them," Locke ordered. The crew executed his command with ruthless efficiency. There was no mercy, no hesitation, only the cold, calculated destruction of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for too long. The Vanguard's weapons continued to fire, cutting down ship after ship until there was nothing left but debris and the faint echoes of what had once been the Drathion's greatest fleet. As the last Drathion ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, the crew let out a collective breath. They had done it. Against all odds, they had destroyed the heart of the Drathion war machine, but none of them celebrated. They knew the mission wasn't over. Not yet. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command," Harris said, breaking the silence. "Patch it through," Locke replied. The view screen flickered, and the face of Admiral Graves appeared. The old man looked haggard, the weight of the war clearly visible on his features, but his eyes were sharp, filled with the same fire that burned within Locke. "Captain Locke," Graves began, his voice gravelly, "we've received word of your success. The Drathion fleet is no more, but there's still the matter of their homeworld." Locke nodded. "We're already on our way, Admiral. The Drathions will pay for what they've done. Every last one." Graves held Locke's gaze for a moment, then nodded in return. "Good luck, Captain. Earth is counting on you." The transmission ended, leaving the crew in silence once more. Locke turned to his men, his expression as hard as ever. "Prepare for the final approach," he ordered. "We're going to finish this." The Vanguard powered forward, cutting through the void toward the Drathion homeworld. There was no turning back now. They had drawn first blood, but the final battle was yet to come. And Locke knew, deep in his bones, that this was the moment that would decide the fate of humanity and the galaxy itself. The Drathion homeworld, Nera, loomed ahead, a dark, foreboding planet surrounded by a dense network of orbital defenses and planetary shields. From orbit, the planet appeared as a roiling mass of storm clouds and volcanic eruptions, its surface a hellish landscape that reflected the nature of its inhabitants. This was the heart of the Drathion Empire, the source of all the pain and destruction they had wrought upon the galaxy. But now, that heart was about to be stopped. The Vanguard slowed as it approached the planet, its weapon systems primed for the final assault. The crew was silent, each man focused on the task at hand, knowing that this was the endgame. They had come this far. There was no room for doubt, no place for fear. "Captain, we're within range of the planetary defenses," Lieutenant Harris reported, his voice steady. "Activate the nanite cloud," Captain Locke ordered. From the Vanguard's hull, a massive cloud of nanites was released, a shimmering swarm that spread out in all directions. The nanites, invisible to the naked eye, began to dismantle the Drathion orbital defenses, piece by piece, disassembling the massive gun platforms, missile silos, and energy turrets that ring the planet. It was an operation that would have taken entire fleets to accomplish, but the Vanguard did it alone, the nanites working with surgical precision to neutralize every threat. "We're picking up a massive energy spike from the surface," Harris warned. "It looks like they're powering up some kind of superweapon." Locke's eyes narrowed. "Bring us into low orbit. Prepare to engage." The Vanguard descended toward the planet, skimming the upper atmosphere as it closed in on the source of the energy spike. Below them, the surface of Nera was a nightmare, a landscape of blackened rock, molten rivers, and towering spires that jutted out of the ground like the teeth of some ancient beast. The Drathions had transformed their world into a fortress, a place designed for war and nothing else. As they neared the superweapon, the Vanguard sensors picked up a massive structure, a fortress that dwarfed anything they had encountered before. It was here that the Drathions had concentrated their last stand, a final bastion of defense that housed their most powerful weapon, a planetary cannon capable of destroying entire fleets with a single shot. "Lock weapons on that fortress," Locke ordered. "We're taking it out before they have a chance to fire." The Vanguard's main cannon swiveled into position, its targeting systems locking onto the fortress. But before they could fire, the planet's surface erupted in a blaze of energy. The Drathion superweapon fired, a massive beam of energy lancing toward the Vanguard. "Brace for impact!" Locke shouted. The ship shuddered as the beam struck the shields, the energy crackling across the hull. The shields held, but only barely. The power of the superweapon was immense, a last-ditch effort by the Drathians to destroy the human warship that had brought their empire to its knees. "Shields at critical levels, Captain," Harris yelled. "We can't take another hit like that." Locke gritted his teeth. "Fire the main cannon, now!" The Vanguard fired, a brilliant beam of energy shooting toward the Drathion fortress. The shot hit dead center, punching through the fortress's shields and striking the heart of the superweapon. There was a moment of silence, and then the fortress exploded in a massive fireball, the shockwave rippling across the planet's surface. The crew let out a collective cheer as the fortress was reduced to rubble, but Locke remained focused. He knew that this was only the beginning of the end. "Captain, we've destroyed the superweapon, but we're detecting massive energy surges all over the planet," Harris reported, his voice tinged with concern. "It looks like they're activating self-destruct protocols. The entire planet is going to blow." Locke's eyes widened. The Drathions were determined to take as many of their enemies with them as possible. If the planet detonated, the resulting explosion could wipe out not just the Vanguard, but possibly damage Earth as well, if the shockwave carried through the galaxy. "We have to stop it," Locke said, his mind racing. "Target the planet's core. We need to destabilize the chain reaction before it's too late." The Vanguard's weapons locked onto the planet's core, deep beneath the surface. It was a desperate move. If they miscalculated, they could accelerate the planet's destruction. But there was no other option. Firing in 3, 2, 1. Locke counted down. The ship fired, its weapons piercing through the planet's crust, drilling deep into the core. The shots hit with precision, targeting the geothermal energy centers that powered the planet's doomsday protocols. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ground below began to tremble, and massive fissures opened up, spewing magma into the atmosphere. The chain reaction had been interrupted. The planet's self-destruct sequence halted, but the damage was done. The planet was tearing itself apart, the crust buckling under the pressure, the landscape cracking and shifting as the core destabilized. "We need to get out of here, Captain," Steele said urgently. "The planet's going to implode." Locke nodded. "Full reverse. Get us clear of the blast radius." The Vanguard's engines roared to life as the ship pulled away from the planet, accelerating as fast as it could. Behind them, Nara began to collapse, the entire surface buckling and folding inward as the core gave out. The ship raced against time, pushing its engines to the limit. "Come on, come on," Locke muttered under his breath, his eyes locked on the view screen. And then, with a final shudder, the planet imploded. The explosion was massive, a supernova-like event that sent shock waves rippling through space. The Vanguard was caught in the outer edges of the blast, the ship shaking violently as it rode the shockwave. But the shields held, the engines held. And finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Vanguard emerged from the explosion, the blackness of space returning to calm. The crew sat in stunned silence, the realization of what they had just accomplished slowly sinking in. The Drathion homeworld was gone, destroyed, along with the last remnants of the Drathion Empire. The terror that had plagued the galaxy for so long was over. Captain Locke stood at the helm, his gaze fixed on the empty space where Nera had once been. He allowed himself a small smile, a smile of satisfaction, of victory. "It's done," he said quietly. The crew erupted into cheers, the tension of the mission finally breaking as they celebrated their impossible victory. They had done it, against all odds, against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. They had won. The galaxy was free. The Vanguard turned, setting course for Earth. There was no need for words. Every man on that ship knew what they had achieved. They were the ones who had stood against the darkness, who had faced down the terror of the Drathions and emerged victorious. As the ship sailed through the void, Captain Locke allowed himself one last look at the empty space behind them, at the place where the Drathion Empire had met its end. And then, with a final, satisfied nod, he turned his attention forward toward the future that they had fought so hard to secure.